I have found the answer to the puzzle here. There's still some things to figure out, I believe, but I think I found out why the ancients revered the sun the way that they did. I do believe that the Eye of Ra does correspond to the brain. Okay? And I do believe that the Orion Nebula plays a part, because when you take a look at Kircher's drawings, I've already figured out that this area means the Orion Nebula. This is the closest star nursery that we have, and it sends cosmic rays to our sun. And so what I believe is, I believe that cosmic rays come to our sun, and in turn our sun affects us. And how does it affect us? Well, we discovered last night from this military article, Radar Department, Faculty of Military Technology, University of Defense, human electromagnetic emission in the ELF band, right? So, Schumann resonance is that's basically where our brain operates. So, imagine a computer. If you speed up the kilohertz or hertz on a computer, you have a faster computer. Your computer can do more, and it's capable of a lot more than it was before. And so the sun, its job basically from sun activity is to modulate. So if the sun is increasing in activity, then it's going to increase the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is what our brain works from. It is the rhythmic generator, or the pacemaker, the thalamus, the part of our brain, which you see right here. This is the thalamus. This is the center of the Eye of Ra. Okay, so if you increase the speed of the computer, how do you do that? Well, you can do it through meditation, or the sun does it also. I'm going to show you something real quick to back this stuff up. Somebody sent me this article last night, 2012, Electromagnetic Effects on Consciousness. Now, we already know that the thalamus, its function includes relaying sensory and motor signals to the cerebral cortex, along with the regulation of consciousness. Okay? And you can do a search for electromagnetic effects, consciousness on the internet. You see all these articles pop up. The very top one is the one that he sent me here. And I'll read the top paragraph because it's a long article. I am convinced that we are currently in the midst of a process involving the restructuring of our neuronal networks, and that the catalyst of this process is the high solar geomagnetic activity whose consequences are feared by so many people today. However, all the facts and findings add up to the undeniable conclusion that this evolution will, for the first time in human history, enable us human beings to use enormous parts of our brains. Now, that makes sense, because then I did a search for Kundalini and thalamus, and I found this. Benov's model of the Kundalini. I'm going to read you a couple of things from these two areas right here. Sitting immobile in meditation, the pumping heart creates micro motions in the upper body. This will stimulate the electrical loop circuit in the sensory cortex, oscillating at 7 hertz. This current creates the physical symptoms experienced in Kundalini awakening. It also stimulates the amygdala, which is very sensitive to kindling. From here it spreads to the hippocampus, the occipital lobes, and finally to the frontal lobes, awakening the whole brain. So that's what this Kundalini is all about. Now, when we come down here, it says as the Kundalini energy rises through the Sushumna, large amounts of high-octane energy reaches the brain. The energy flows from RAS and thalamus to the cortex and awakens dormant, underactive parts of the brain, especially in the frontal lobes. The whole brain now begins to pulse as a unit generating coherent, high-amplitude brain waves, because the hertz have now increased within all frequency bands. Maximum amplitude, higher hertz, right? Will usually be in the alpha band. However, fast EEG activity in the beta and gamma bands will strongly be increased in the frontal area. The kindling phenomena speeds up the electrical loop system, which exists between the thalamus and the cortex, which is exactly what I was showing you. The thalamus, the Eye of Ra. So if you increase the ability, you increase the hertz of your computer, it speeds up, and it's going to awaken these areas of the cortex. So what the sun is actually going to be doing, I believe, is playing a part in inducing Kundalini in our brains and waking up dormant areas of our brain that we don't ever use, or that are latent. And I believe that this is what this is all about. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. I'll provide the links in the description area. Everybody have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Man, know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe and God. Hi there, welcome back. As we touched upon in Lesson 1, the world right now is in an incredibly disharmonic state. A few people mentioned that we've always been disharmonic, and this is true. In fact, we've been growing more and more disharmonic for about 13,000 years now. It's in our DNA, and it's something that we're passing through as a species. We're at the end of it though, and we will never be here again. We're just not in tune with ourselves, and mass consciousness is beginning to realize it. The reason for this, however, is not because of bad politics or greed in business. Those are simply long-term manifestations of the real problem, which lies on a much more individual level. The true problem is in our old way of thinking, creating tension on every level. This will become more apparent as the lessons go on. We're going through something of a shift right now into a completely new state of being, with a new way of thinking and a different understanding of the one reality. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about chakras and how you can become more in tune with yourself and those around you on multiple levels. Now, for us to even start to understand chakras, first we have to understand the basics of light and color. If you take pure light and shine it through a prism, the light will break into a spectrum of 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. We familiarly recognize this as the spectrum of the rainbow, or even more familiar, the basic palette in Photoshop. This spectrum as we know it is the foundation of every visible color. What you might not know about color is that each color has its own vibration. Red has the longest wavelength and the slowest vibration frequency. We recognize this as warm and stimulating. Violet has the shortest wavelength and the fastest frequency, and we recognize it as cool and calming. I don't think I have to describe what happens between these two colors, it's just a frequency change. This basic knowledge, believe it or not, is very important, but we're gonna have to look at some other stuff first. Now, in modern science, we've learned that certain colors can stimulate mental activity, and other colors can calm the mind. We know that we need light energy for nourishing our brain, emotion, physical body, and perhaps more importantly, our chakras. So, what is a chakra? The word chakra comes from the Sanskrit word meaning wheel. A chakra is a wheel-like vortex spinning in a circular motion within the body. This forms a vacuum in the center that draws in energy on a vibratory level. It can draw in anything from color vibration to microwaves to energy and emotions of people that we come into contact with. This works in tandem with the thought realm that we discussed last week, as thoughts are on a vibratory level. Right, so chakras are energy points that run vertically from the top of your head down your spine. Depending on how you look at it, there are 7, 8, or 13 primary chakras, as well as over hundreds of smaller, less important ones that are just scattered around the body. I'm going to cover the 8 and 13 later on, so for now let's just stick with the basic 7. Your chakras are kind of like the etheric motor of the soul. Not only do chakras draw in energy, each and every chakra radiates an energy of vibration and govern over a major organ or gland connected to other body parts that resonate of the same frequency. To have balanced and aligned chakras will make you happier, healthier, and more in tune with yourself. When one chakra center is out of sync, it may eventually affect the organs and glands that it's connected to, and cause chakras neighboring them to also go out of sync, causing a chain reaction and many bodily imbalances. A chakra can become out of balance when it is overactive, underactive, or possibly congested or blocked. This is almost always felt on a mental, emotional, or physical level. The benefits to energizing your chakras and learning about them are primarily for a harmony of mind, body, and spirit. Your mind alone cannot nurture your whole being, nor can a proper food diet solve all of your problems. It is through your chakras that you can learn to balance all of you, bringing you into a healthier state of consciousness. As I mentioned before, each chakra is connected to an organ or gland, which governs over a section of the body. The order of the chakras actually go from the bottom up, starting with red, and changing vibrations in each chakra until you get to violet. Before we go any further, think about this. When you break light apart, you get 7 colors. These are the same 7 colors that our physical body is tethered to. What would you see if you were to look at a human through an etheric prism? Are we beings of light? Think about it. Now, not only does each chakra connect to an organ or gland, but each chakra also has a very specific trait. The first chakra is survival and is connected to the adrenal gland. The next one is sex or interaction, which is connected to the gonad. The third is power or ego and is connected to the pancreas. The fourth is love and connects to the thymus. The fifth is expression and connects to the thyroid. The sixth is the third eye, which is psychic and intuitive and connects to the pituitary gland. Finally is the crown chakra, which is the spiritual chakra and connects to the pineal gland. Survival, sex, power, love, expression, intuition, spiritual. These are the 7 traits through which we grow and are at the core of our being. Do you know of a time when you were struggling with your ego, or didn't seem to have a heart, or couldn't express yourself? If you or anyone you know have a problem or come off too strong in any of these traits, the reason why is because of an imbalance within the chakras. Okay, so we know what chakras are now, yet we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of this topic. For the remainder of this lesson, I want to talk about methods of opening, activating, and charging your chakras. I feel like it will be more beneficial to you at this point. As we know, each chakra resonates to a color that we just discussed. Doing things like wearing clothing that matches the color of a chakra will cause it to resonate. I remember when I first learned about this, all of my chakras were closed except for my throat, which was way too open. The reason for this was because my bedroom was painted blue, as well as my bed sheets were blue, and every night I would get a chakra boost in that one area. Sunlight is our main source and provider of light, heat, and energy. Sunlight itself consists of energies in the form of cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, visible light rays, infrared rays, microwaves, and even radio waves. Lying in the sun for half an hour can give you a powerful energy boost. Eating food that matches the chakra colors are good as well. Eating red tomatoes and apples are good for the root chakra. Eating greens are good for the heart. Does this make you want to eat healthier? Color baths are a really relaxing way to open a chakra. You can get this organic fluid that you put in your bath, which changes the color of the bath. You can just lay back and relax and get an energy boost from the water itself. Finally, and this is the best way to open your chakras hands down, go get Reiki. I kid you not, it is the equivalent of spiritual surgery. You lie down and become super relaxed. A Reiki master will then individually go over all of your chakras, opening the ones that are closed and aligning them. See, Reiki masters are people who have had spiritual training on seeing your chakras. Yeah, they can actually see them through the third eye. They learn to move energy throughout their body and connect it and flow it into yours. It's a very amazing process. You may have to ask, but Reiki masters can also typically communicate to your higher self for you and ask you what you need to progress in your path. Reiki itself is growing more and more popular in the last 15 years, so it shouldn't be very hard to find a number of places near you that have it. If you're serious about this and you don't know where to start, Reiki is an excellent first step. Medical science has proven that toxins and impurities, including negative thoughts, chemicals in our food, and other pollutants can influence the body. If these are consistent, chakra imbalances can manifest, which may eventually affect us on a mental and physical levels. Traditional healthcare at this time is unable to naturally or totally alleviate symptoms or cure all of our problems. This means it is up to us to improve our health conditions. We cannot forget about our whole being. In today's society, we put way too much emphasis on independence and not enough on interdependence. Our chakras are interdependent of each other, and we need to take care of all of them to take care of our whole. And that's basics of chakras. Believe it or not, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of this incredible and complex topic. Chakras 2 will be a few weeks away though. Next week, we're gonna look at indigo children and super psychics. See you next week, and so it is. Today we're going to discuss one of the most critical and important topics that we will ever discuss in spirit science. Among all of the things we have discussed, this is one that needs to be taken seriously and is the most important part of the evolution of consciousness that we are experiencing today. Today we shall discuss the power of the heart. Let's just dive right into this. What does the heart have to do with anything? Well, it's pretty much everything. When you're first incarnating at a microscopic level, the physical body starts out as a cell, or as we call it in the geometry world, a sphere. Then, you begin to multiply inwards to understand how your own spherical geometry works. Once your sphereness understands itself inwards, it can begin to expand outwards. You soon become a four-celled organism in the form of a tetrahedron. Soon after that, you become a star tetrahedron, which is the egg of life form we discussed in lesson 6. From this diagram, it probably looks more like a cube, but if you rotate it, you begin to see the star tetrahedron form. This form is 8 cells, which from a metaphysical perspective is the basis of the 8 base chakras in the octave of your body. After that, you become a mess of cells for a while, but eventually you become a toroidal field. The space at the very core of that field is where your first actual organ appears, which is the heart. Okay, so the heart is the first organ that appears as you're manifesting into physical reality. What else? Well, the brain and the heart are both electromagnetic field generators, but the heart has a field that is so much more powerful than the brain. In fact, the heart is 100 times electrically stronger
and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain. This is important because those two fields are the fields that make up the reality we exist within: electrical and magnetic, electromagnetic fields. We're going to look at the work now of the Institute of HeartMath, which is an organization with over 19 years of research and study on the psychophysiology of stress, emotions, and the interactions between the heart and the brain. The information they have discovered and compiled is revolutionary. On the technical side, the Institute puts a lot of focus into understanding the spaces between the heartbeat, which is called the heart rate variability, or HRV for short. It used to be assumed in science that the heart at rest beat like a metronome, faithfully beating out a steady rhythm. Moment-to-moment variations of the heartbeat are generally overlooked when your heart rate is being measured by a doctor, who will take your pulse and tell you that your heart is beating at, say, 70 beats per minute. Through the use of a technology called electrocardiogram and EM wave scanners, scientists were able to measure every heartbeat in real time and learned that a healthy heart, even under resting conditions, were actually quite irregular. In a simplified sense, your heart does not beat like clockwork as it was once assumed, but even healthy hearts tend to beat quite irregularly. Why is this important? By understanding how your heart is beating, we begin to have a clearer picture of our adaptability to the environmental and situational demands that we find ourselves in. If your boss at work tells you to do some extra work, your heart will paint a clear picture of how you're reacting. If you're totally cool with it, the heart will maintain the same general flow that it was already going at. If this new information causes you to feel stress, that will be demonstrated by the heartbeat fluctuating into an intense chaotic mess, or somewhere in the middle. Now, these fluctuations in how your heart beats come from a variety of sources and demonstrate our physiological resilience and behavioral flexibility to our experiences. Research done at the Institute of HeartMath has shown that one of the most powerful factors in affecting our heart's changing rhythm is our feelings and emotions. When our varying heart rate is plotted over time, the overall shape of the waveform is called our heart rhythm pattern. HeartMath has demonstrated that the emotions we experience directly affect our heart rhythm pattern, and this in turn shows us how our body is functioning. In general, emotions like stress, anger, frustration, and anxiety cause the heart rhythm pattern to become very chaotic, like so. This waveform looks like a series of uneven, jagged peaks. Physiologically, this shows us that the heart is not in harmony with itself. This can be likened to driving a car with one foot on the accelerator and the other foot on the brake at the same time, possibly while trying to go from first gear to fourth and then back. This creates an incredibly jerky ride, burns more gasoline, and isn't great for the car altogether. Likewise, when your heart is functioning from a place of stress and anxiety, it causes our bodies to operate insufficiently, deplete our energies, and produce extra wear and tear on the whole system. This is especially true if stress and negative emotions are prolonged or experienced often. What about positive emotions? Well, there is a massive visible contrast. Positive emotions send a very different signal throughout our body. When we experience uplifting emotions like love, appreciation, joy, and care, our heart rhythm pattern becomes a highly ordered, smooth, and harmonious wave. We begin to match the waveforms that are seen in the color spectrum, or perhaps we could liken it to music. This is one aspect of what it means to be more harmonious with nature, and since nature flows through sacred geometry, we are also becoming more aligned consciously with ourselves and the universe around us. It is no wonder that positive emotions feel so good. They actually help our body system become more harmonious and synchronized and work better. The Institute of HeartMath has shown that generating sustained positive emotions facilitates a body-wide shift to a specific, scientifically measurable state called psychophysiological coherence. Let's break this down. Psycho comes from psychological, which means mental and emotions, and physiological means body. Coherence is systematic or logical connection or harmony. Altogether, it means a harmony of both body, mind, and emotional functions. If you're familiar with the four elements, you know that earth is the physical, so body, air is mental, mind, water is emotions, and fire is spirit. HeartMath has scientifically shown now that positive and healthy emotions bring 3 of those elements into coherence, and although they don't look at the spiritual aspect, I don't doubt that the fire element also comes into harmony. In an experiment done at the Institute, they hooked up scanners to an individual who was subjected to very chaotic emotions. For 300 seconds, they measured the respiration, heart rate variability, and blood pressure rhythm. After this time, the individual on the scanners did a technique on himself which they have dubbed the HeartMath Quick Coherence Technique, which activated a feeling of love and appreciation. Instantly, all 3 of the rhythms came into entrainment and harmony with each other, and stayed in harmony for the remainder of the experiment. One important note to stress is that cohesion is not relaxation. The process of relaxation is a low energy state in which the individual rests both body and mind, typically disengaging from cognitive and emotional processes. In contrast, coherence is experienced as a calm and balanced, yet energized and responsive state of being that is optimal for mental acuity, focus, problem solving, and decision making, as well as the physical activity and coordination. So coherence is the natural state you want to be in all the time. Unless you're relaxing, that's good too. So how does one get into this state of cohesion? Breathing. Your breath is intimately connected to your heart rate and your heart in general. And if you ever find yourself in a very chaotic mental state, take a few seconds to step back of what's causing the chaos and focus on your breath. Take long and deep breaths. The Institute of Heart Math doesn't put too much focus into particular breathing techniques, but they put an emphasis on using your breath as well as positive and loving emotions to bring you back into a state of cohesion. They say that it's not super necessary to put focus on your breath all the time, but it is very helpful to bring yourself out of chaos and back into alignment. From a spiritual perspective, and if you're working towards that, breath is very important. However, breath is another huge topic, and I personally recommend focusing on your breath during meditations. Focusing on breathing and your heart is a beautiful way to move into a silent space during meditation and deeper into yourself, all while sustaining the same healthy emotions. Now, throughout ancient history, across many, many religions and belief systems, the heart was always considered a center of the being, the source of spiritual wisdom and insight, thought, emotion, and connection to the divine. The ancient Egyptians believed that all thought and life was done from the heart, which is why they threw away the brain after the pharaoh died, but they left the heart in the body. They felt that the being would need it in the next life, so they left it there, but the brain was useless. Western scientific thought places the heart as just a pump. However, in the last several decades, science has begun to go full circle in realizing and understanding what these ancient civilizations knew and taught. In the field of neurocardiology, scientists have discovered that the heart possesses its own intrinsic nervous system, a network of brain cells with over 40,000 neurons. This gives the heart the ability to independently sense and process information, and make decisions, even demonstrate a type of learning and memory. In a simplified sense, you can think with your heart. The heart is truly an intelligent system. The heart also has found to be a hormone gland, manufacturing and secreting numerous hormones and neurotransmitters that profoundly affect the brain and body function. Among these hormones is one called oxytocin, well known as the love or bonding hormone, bringing things together. Science is also beginning to understand that the electromagnetic field around the heart has a powerful effect on not just the human body, but others around you as well. Research has also shown that the heart is the key component of the emotional system. Science now understands that the heart not only responds to emotions, but the signals it sends out dramatically affects the quality of the emotional experience from moment to moment, and also that our heart plays a key role in accessing our intuition. In school, we've been taught that the heart is constantly responding to orders sent from the brain. But what's less commonly talked about is that the brain receives even more orders from the heart. We've been doing it backwards. Moreover, these signals have a significant effect on brain function, influencing emotional processes as well as higher cognitive faculties such as attention, perception, memory, and problem solving. Guide yourself from your heart, not from your brain. When you allow your negative emotions to get to you, you disconnect from your ability to think clearly, remember things, learn lessons, reason, and make effective decisions, which explains why often we act impulsively and unwisely under stress. The heart's signal has a profound effect on the brain during positive and negative emotions. Live in your heart, for the heart is the center of unity consciousness, where the brain is the center of duality consciousness. You can see that right in how they're made. The brain has the two hemispheres. The heart is a place of unity. Since we fell in consciousness, we moved from heart consciousness and into our brains, and all decisions were made from the brain. In doing so, we became polarized and lost our connections to the universal consciousness called unity. This shift in consciousness we are experiencing now is a movement from the brain and back into the heart, where we will once again know and understand the universe and unconditional love for everyone and all things, regardless of who they are or what damage they've done to themselves or others. And this is why the heart is so important right now. Live in your heart. It is the gateway to the divine.
I'm Karina. I'm a professional psychic, and I've been working as a psychic professionally on and off for about 30 years, but full-time for about 6 or 7 years. I work on television mainly. I do private readings as well. I absolutely love the work I do, but sometimes it is very, very draining. I always felt there would be some major event, some major catastrophe, something life-changing for life on Earth. There will be a raising in both sea levels, and there will also be a lot of water coming over the land. The tsunamis that have happened, the earthquakes that we've had, the nuclear catastrophe we've had, and nearly every single prophecy from every single different area around the globe does say that this is the start of it. It's going to be the winter solstice, which is 21st December 2012, 11:11 in the morning. It also feels very much like I'm running out of time, which is quite scary, because I want to move house, because I want to move somewhere higher, because I want to move away from what I will perceive will be a great big flood of water. Whether it will recede afterwards or not, I don't know, but obviously who wants to be in the path of something like that? Most of the meditations I've actually done, I seem to always receive that I need to be over 700 feet, which is above sea level. So we're looking at moving somewhere higher up. I'll be laying in the bath, enjoying a really nice soak in the bath, and I think, I won't be able to do this in the future. Make the most of it now. Initially people would be so very much focused on keeping themselves alive and just having enough to eat, keeping themselves warm, that for a while they won't be missing anything like that. So many other psychics I've spoken to, and this goes back years and years and years, have said the same thing. There are theories that this happens every few thousand years. The theories of course, the Ark and the Big Flood, that was one of them. It was meant to be, of course, that the divine said, right, Earth has got too evil, we're going to wipe everybody away apart from the chosen few. The world is long overdue for a huge volcanic eruption that could put us into another ice age. We are also long overdue from being hit by an asteroid. It's amazing we've actually escaped it so far, and those two natural disasters on their own can cause absolute chaos. All the feelings I've ever had along those lines are God, run and hide. A lot of people I know are having lots of dreams a very, very similar way. Really the main focus with 2012 is making sure you are ready. So I think it's quite an important lesson for everybody to learn to stock up on books on things. You must be self-reliant, self-sufficient, you must know how to defend yourself, you must know how to grow your own food, you've got to know about medicines, you've got to know about herbs. A lot of it is going to go back to self-sufficiency. One of the other key things that has been predicted with 2012 is this enormous evolution of people and their psychic development. Yes, you're not alone. It's not just you. Yes, other people are having these dreams. Yes, other people are having these feelings. Yes, other people are in agreement with you. It's completely fated. It's completely meant to be. And it's a sort of, well, this is drawing something nice out of all the horrible things that will actually happen. And I cannot tell you the amount of people I've spoken to over the past 5-6 years, both on the phone lines and just socially, meeting with other pagan groups, meeting actually with just other spiritual groups, some people, Christians, whatever, and in fact even a few Muslim people, that have been having dreams about tsunamis, have been having dreams about floods. I know there's a lot of people, including a few people that I'm reasonably close to, that are convinced that this is going to happen. Some of the people I've come across, they're obviously, there's no other way of putting it, obviously quite scared, and they just want to block it out of their mind and, I just don't want to think about it. I just don't want to think about it at all. Let's just see what's going to happen. If you possibly can, I think, make sure you're somewhere high up. And that would be the key thing, just make sure you are somewhere that you feel that would be quite safe.
Hey everybody, my name's Jessica Caratello, and if some of you are familiar with me, I'm a psychic medium in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I have a website, jessicacaratello.com, and I'm here to do what I was going to do about a week ago, which was to forewarn you of some predictions that were coming in. This is the update on the California earthquake prediction of 2012. The new information is that I'm expecting a big earthquake to hit Southern California, near the LA area, in August of 2012. And then in October, I'm waiting for another one to hit the San Francisco area. The information about the San Francisco area came to me earlier this week when my sister and I caught the end of a show on the Weather Channel that was showing how they were preparing, and this was 6 years ago, for the earthquake that seismologists have predicted was going to happen, and that it was a ticking time bomb. Now that was in 2006. They were really hoping to be done with their project by 2012, and they were really hoping that the earthquake didn't come in between 2006 and 2012. So again, the prediction stands right now that I'm still waiting for one for Southern California, and that's going to be a large one, and then another big one in October, but in the San Francisco area. Bye everybody.
Is divine intervention now taking place on a dramatic, unprecedented basis worldwide? David Wilcock thinks so. We'll check in with him next on Coast to Coast AM. You talk about divine intervention, and there's a major article on your website, Divine Cosmos, about this. What do you mean by that?
Well, by divine intervention, I mean that there appear to be extraterrestrial forces that are steering the evolution of life on Earth. I think they've always been there, and I think that they largely have to follow a prime directive where they don't get to intervene in what we do. But under certain circumstances, they will be able to move, and I think they get a lot more flexibility to move as we head towards the end of this cycle that they talk about, which is the end of this year.
What do you think's going on?
Well, that's a complicated discussion, but I'll try to summarize it as briefly as I can.
Okay.
I think that UFOs appearing in the sky would be an example of divine intervention, but we never get enough of it to be absolutely proven that this is really real. I think another example of divine intervention is the systematic powering down of nuclear missile installations that's occurred ever since we invented nuclear weapons. There was a very explosive testimony, pun intended, that showed up recently where something was revealed by Major Sergeant Bob Dean on a Project Camelot video, which I'd already heard before, namely that the Cold War between the U.S. and the USSR ended as a result of literally all the ICBMs on both sides being completely rendered inactive and inert radioactively.
They couldn't launch if they wanted to.
That's right. And what people don't realize, which is what I'm getting ready to announce in parts of this Divine Intervention series that haven't gone online yet, is that very soon after this was done, there was a gigantic Hindu mandala called the Sri Yantra that was carved over the course of 13 miles into a dry lake bed in Oregon. This was in 1990. And it's absolutely geometrically perfect, and there's a couple surviving pictures of it, but if you Google Sri Yantra, which is SRIYANTRA, and then dry lake bed Oregon, you'll find it. And it's very interesting because if the government is trying to say that whoever did this is the enemy, isn't it interesting that it led to the end of the Cold War, and that the enemy, quote-unquote, was sort of like tagging their work by giving us this very ancient sacred symbol. And, of course, people tried to say that it was a hoax. They tried to see if there was a way they could duplicate this, but the ground was so hard out there that nobody could plow through it, and nobody could even hope to duplicate this kind of a phenomenon. Obviously, go ahead.
If there's divine intervention, though, why are they doing this?
I think ultimately why they're doing it is to prevent total Holocaust. I think that there is a very negative element on Earth, which we can call the cabal. And the cabal is essentially behind the Federal Reserve System, and they're behind a lot of the G7 governments, and they've penetrated into a variety of levels of society. And I think this group would very much like to create mass atrocities on Earth as a way of distracting everyone who's now waking up to their existence. And it's very difficult for people to embrace the truth about this, because what it does is it puts them into a state of extreme fear. And, George, I want to commend you and everyone on your staff for how incredibly vast the amount of truth and the amount of calming information that you've been able to bring out on this show has been.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
So I want people to realize that while there are steps that we can take and are taking to address this here on Earth, which are very important, I think it's also very clear that these guys will not be allowed to have a big nuclear war. They will not be allowed to fake an alien invasion. And the divine intervention that we're now seeing is systematically making it impossible for them to start World War III.
They must be frustrated. the cabal?
Oh, no question. Look, this is like a heroin junkie where the only thing they know how to do is to mix up another fix. And you need a bigger and bigger fix to get the same result. And so even something like 9/11 might not be big enough to get the result they need. They're looking at trying to do something that would be so shocking, that would cause so much mass catastrophe, that literally what they're praying for right now is that Americans are just eating each other and burning their cities down. That's what they want.
You say that things are breaking down, that missiles are being, stopped, that weaponry is being clogged up, that things are happening. What's going on there?
Well, this is a very complex discussion, and I'm glad we have 3 hours because we're going to need it. First of all, the missiles being powered down is a phenomenon that's gone on ever since the dawn of the nuclear age. And I want to give you a couple examples on that.
Okay.
There have been UFOs appearing over missile installations all over the world. It does not matter which country we're talking about. I want to be clear on that. This is not some adversarial extraterrestrial force that is singling out certain particular nations or nation-states and making an example out of them.
And we've had some military experts on the show who were there, and they tell us this happened.
Yeah, I imagine you probably had Robert Hastings at one point, right?
Yep.
There you go. Well, for those who don't immediately know why I mentioned that name, he actually had a whole conference at the National Press Club just devoted to this subject.
That's right.
And there's video of that on his website. So you can Google his name and Google a couple things like ICBM, and you'll find it right away.
Real American soldiers who witnessed real shutdowns of our silos.
And, George, you know when you talk to these people, they're not lying.
They're not lying.
I mean, come on.
And they are who they say they are.
Absolutely.
The cabal, do they know what's going on? Are they aware of the possibility that this intervention may not let them do what they want to do?
They're very aware of it, because you have to remember that there are many levels within this game, and as Richard Hoagland in his classic Insider Source coined the term, and I've spoken to the same guy, the lie is different at every level.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just jump right off into the deep end here and say that if you go to the highest levels of this cabal, they are openly and routinely interacting with a variety of extraterrestrial species. They have essentially knowledge that humans on Earth are hybrids from a variety of other human species that have been coming here for many thousands of years. They never lost the Stargate technology. It's always been here. They've been using it all along to come and go. So these people don't even really feel that much of an affinity or a native sense of being on Earth, because they have plenty of other places they can go. And yet, despite all this technology, and despite the fact that they've spent billions of dollars on movies to telegraph the ultimate coup de grace that they were going to deliver to Earth. See, I was just in France. And
yeah.
Because of this, they cannot believe now that extraterrestrials who are different than the ones they normally are hanging out with are intervening and basically saying you're not going to be allowed to do this. But it's very strange, because these higher level ETs could totally destroy them overnight, and yet they're not. They do a little here and they do a little there. And the New World Order guys seem to be able to keep on functioning, but then they get handicapped even more, and they get handicapped even more. And this has been going on for some time. Remember, what did I say about the end of the Cold War? This was, according to Major Sergeant Bob Dean and others who I spoke to, they told me if I talked about this, I'd be killed, so I never said anything. But that's apparently why the U.S. and the USSR stopped having the Cold War, because all the missiles were completely ruined.
Yeah, the Cold War simply seemed to just go away.
It really did. And what we now know is that UFOs have appeared around missiles that were in flight, and then you see little beams coming out of the UFO, and all of a sudden the missile plunks down and it's completely radioactively inert, has no radioactivity. That kind of stuff keeps happening. We see that, for example, when Apollo 13 had all the problems that it had, there's plenty of whistleblowers who have come forward now and said that those astronauts were bringing a nuclear device to the moon. And so it was an intervention that was intended to stop the radioactive polluting of a wide variety of life on the moon. I heard from one of my insiders very recently that there is so much extraterrestrial activity on the dark side of the moon right now that, quote-unquote, it looks like a frickin' airport.
Jeez.
It's all over the place. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of ships parked on the dark side of the moon, and if we could see it, we'd see lights everywhere and things moving around everywhere.
Coming and going?
Oh, yeah. Graham Hancock found this story and presented it to the world in Fingerprints of the Gods, which I read shortly after graduating college in 1995. It absolutely blew my doors off. The question is this: how can dozens of ancient cultures, geographically isolated all over the world, independently have the same basic mythological framework that talks about this cycle in the earth, and that at the end of the cycle there is some pain that we go through, there is some earth changes and some cataclysmic activity, which we're already seeing, but, and here's the important part, it ushers in a golden age, and these myths are very specific about the grandeur of this golden age that results. It is so discontinuously better than what we have now that it's like the difference between night and day. And in fact, the so-called Illuminati often use the catchphrase, the dawn of a new day, to emphasize the teaching that they also inherited, which they seem to think they've got a lot more information about than most people do. They know about the end of the cycle, and they're expecting that when the end of the cycle comes around that they get to have their new world order. But what's happening is events are steering them off of that timeline. So, George, to the substance of your question about what do I think is going to happen, I would love to have that answer. We're talking about a prophecy that actually is being supported by hard data. Look in the solar system. Look in our backyard. Find the truth for yourself. There is a researcher named Dr. Harold Aston who put together a series of equations that talked about what kind of microwave light will be given off by higher dimensions, that higher dimensions really exist, there are alternate domains that we could ultimately live in, and that those domains give off frequencies of microwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did this all by back-engineering the Maxwell equations and coming out with very simple alterations of it. And there's a website he had, still has, which is energyscience.co.uk. I think that's still the website. And there's a series of tutorials that you can read where he talks you through how the equations were built. It's very logical if you can understand some physics. The conclusion is that he gets these numbers that represent the microwave frequencies that higher dimensions give off, and he calculates them down to multiple decimal points of accuracy with the scientific process. He was blown away when another researcher named Dr. William Tift found these exact same microwave numbers out in space. And what's the most interesting is that these numbers come out of galaxies in onion-like layers that are concentric with the center of the galaxy. In other words, the highest microwave numbers are at the center, the lowest ones are at the outside, and they come along in stepwise fashion, meaning like in the center you'll have a 10, and then the next zone is a 9, and the next zone is an 8, a 7, a 6, a 5, and there's nothing in between. So what are these zones? It literally means that every star within said zone, whether it's a 6 or a 5, let's say it starts out as a 5, and then the 6 starts coming in, when the star is a 5, it gives off the signature of a 5. And all of a sudden, it goes to a 6. And that means that the microwave energy that that star is giving off suddenly and dramatically changes. Now, this is science. I didn't make this up, and I lay it all out in the book, Source Field Investigations. Also, Dr. William Tift, the man who discovered this, saw that these zones are expanding away from the center of the galaxy. They're on the move. They don't sit still.
Okay.
And so I've said that, okay, these are galactic zones of energy. This is the incoming energy that's charging up our solar system, making the planets hotter, brighter, and more magnetic.
Right. It's hitting all of them.
And I believe, that there are ETs out there who can see this wave coming. They've been seeing it coming for thousands of years, and they've written it into all the great religious texts and all these dozens of ancient mythologies that talked about this cycle in the Earth. Now, how the cycle in the Earth links to galactic energy is a more complex discussion, which I'd be happy to go into, but this is radio, and this is not a scientific panel, so it would take some time to do that. I'd be happy to do that.
We'll
but
touch
we got
on
a lot
it
of
a
things
little
to talk
bit
about here.
So you do believe that we're going through a solar system change. Could it be catastrophic?
Sure. I think it already is. I think we're already seeing things like Fukushima and the Indonesian tsunami, and there's been an over 500% increase in volcanic activity and over 400% increase in earthquake activity. That's all easily documented. All you have to do is look at earthquakes above 2.5 on the Richter scale since 1973, and they've gone way, way up. So some of these changes are attributable to human pollution, global warming. That's a valid hypothesis for some things, but certainly not for things like an increase in volcanism and earthquake activity. And yet it's happening. So the ancient prophecies did say there would be cataclysmic activity, but where I disagree with the insiders, with these folks who are, in some cases, not all cases, in some cases they're Luciferians, is they think that God basically has it out for us and is going to wipe out the planet, and that's a good thing. So they dug in underground, they built all these underground bases, and they plan on riding this thing out while everybody else on the surface is toast. Whether they think it's going to be a solar explosion, whether they think it's going to be a pole shift, floods, they are absolutely desperate for this cataclysm to happen. And at this point, it's basically the only fallback they've got. What they don't realize is that they were manipulated thousands and thousands of years ago by these ETs who put in prophecies that are very cleverly worded so that
like codes?
Like what?
Codes?
Yeah. The prophecies have clever codes in them that say what actually happens. They say that there's going to be the coming of a golden age, but they do it in code. Let me give an interesting example. Hindu scripture is probably one of the greatest golden age prophecies we've got. They talk about it in quite some length. In the Hindu scripture, it says that there is some sort of world catastrophe, and that's in there. And so that's the part that if you're paranoid, you could hinge your head on that. But then immediately after that part of the scripture, it's talking about everybody still being here and everything still being fine. Nobody's died off. And it says that there is the coming of what they call Kalki the Destroyer, which apparently is some sort of higher level being that has telekinesis and incredible power and literally defeats the negative forces on Earth, which in the Hindu scripture are called the Mleccha kings, M-L-E-C-C-H-A. And even the word kind of sounds like you're vomiting, blech, right? I think that's why they chose that term. And Kalki literally comes in and wipes these guys out. And I think that they are now fulfilling the prophecy of Kalki the Destroyer. It's just that it hasn't quite become public yet. But there's lots of events that have filtered into the media, which if you know what you're looking at, you can see some of the traces of this. Unfortunately, although that line of reasoning bore beautiful fruit at the end of the year 2010, beginning in October, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you. And it also continued with these underground bases that were destroyed beginning on August 23rd, 2011. Much of what's happened since then has not yet gone public, but it amounts to a complete collapse of the war machine and the ability to create World War III.
But I do want to get your take again on end times prophecy, pulling out the old book of Revelation in the Bible. So many different civilizations all seem to write about the same thing, that, you know, we are in the midst of a major upheaval. Your thoughts?
Wow. Whew.
I never
Totally
said it
do
would.
believe-
Never said it would be easy for you, David.
Hey, you know, I volunteered for this, and I'm doing what I can.
Yes,
so.
you are. You're doing well.
Sure. We are definitely going through a time of upheaval, and many, many ancient prophecies talked about that. And remember, too, anybody who tries to say, oh, well, this is just a Judeo-Christian belief in the rapture, We're talking about dozens of ancient cultures that predicted the coming of a golden age, whether you're out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, or whether you're in India, or whether you're in Africa, or whether you're Australian. Doesn't matter where you came from. Every geographical region throughout every part of Earth's history has these prophecies in it. My personal take on it, again, is that the disaster prophecy that Earth is totally wiped out is a cleverly worded misunderstanding that the people who wrote these myths originally, which were the gods, if you will, humans that came here and had very powerful abilities compared to the indigenous folks, the gods wrote those prophecies to fool these New World Order guys, and it's worked very well. They've dug in underground. They think the end is coming. I personally do not. And yes, I did talk about interplanetary climate change. I did say that NASA studies reveal that the whole solar system is going through a very powerful shift. But one of the main reasons why I don't believe in apocalypse is simply that I've had divine contact of my own. I've been documenting my dreams every day for 20 years, and my life has been infused with a variety of wondrous synchronicities and events that completely defy logic. The Casey readings being documented, 14,000 readings being documented, would be an example of a publicly accessible body of information, which is essentially coming from what is referred to as the source, and clearly reveals that humanity is being guided through its spiritual evolution, and that there is a big event coming, which they said in the Casey readings would be the fifth root race. So in my work, I also talk about a misunderstanding in classical literature. And when I say classical literature, I mean Greco-Roman literature, which inherited many much older texts. So when Greco-Roman classical literature talks about the golden age that they're expecting, that's a mistranslation. And it comes from words that were improperly translated, and when you actually fix the translation, instead of golden age, it becomes golden race. And this is not Hitlerian, it's not Nietzschean. It doesn't mean that one race gets elevated and others go in the toilet. It means that we all go through some sort of intrinsic energetic change. And this is the really important part for me. That change requires a spiritual evolution to occur. This is not a cosmic light switch. It's not some passive process that we have no control over and no participation with. It's a change that actually requires us to evolve, and it's an evolution into the greater nature of what it means to be human and what it means to be alive in this universe. And in fact, they've had a real hard time trying to create this mass population reduction. They've had various initiatives that they tried to do. They tried to do it with a weaponized version of the swine flu. And George, through your show and through the brave whistleblowers who came forward, we stopped that one.
I think so.
And there have been many other examples of that. And you keep hearing something new on the internet over and over again. Everybody wants to drum the drums and say, oh my God, the big one is coming. The difficulties are about to begin. We're right on the threshold of the New World Order is going to take over. Well, look, I mean, come on. How many years are we going to hear this? Even back when I got on the internet in 1995, and the original progenitor of your show, George, which was with Art Bell, every night Art had somebody on saying, oh my God, it's about to happen. I mean, am I wrong? Go back and listen to the archive on Streamlink.
Every night. No.
Okay, so why hasn't it happened? It hasn't happened on a multiple level because, first of all, the people don't want it to happen. They don't have enough personnel to hold the guns. Second of all, higher intelligence is intervening and making sure that it doesn't happen.
Take a look at our galaxy. There are 100 billion stars in our galaxy. Now take a look at the galaxies of the universe. We can actually count them. In the visible universe, our telescopes have the range to see 100 billion galaxies. Well, how many stars are there in the visible universe? Count them. 100 billion times 100 billion. That is an astronomical number. You have to be supremely arrogant to believe that we are the only ones in town.
Here we are 25,000 light years away from the center of our galaxy, and our galaxy is over 100,000 light years across. But even that, as large as it is kind of a speck in the cosmic distance scale.
Our Milky Way galaxy may appear big to us, but compared to some others out there, it's actually pretty small.
Come on. I ain't gonna bite you. Come around here. Let me have a look at you. My goodness, look at you. You turned out all right, didn't you? How do you feel? Let's get the obvious stuff out of the way.
You're not human, right?
Well, it's tough to get any more obvious than that.
If I had to guess, I'd say you're a program from the machine world. So is he.
So far, so good.
But if that's true, that could mean you're a part of the system. Another kind of control.
Keep going.
I suppose the most obvious question is, how can I trust you?
Bingo. It is a pickle, no doubt about it. Bad news is there's no way if you can really know whether I'm here to help you or not. So it's really up to you. Just have to make up your own damn mind to either accept what I'm going to tell you or reject it. Candy?
There are multitudes of cultures and societies that exist throughout the vastness of space, and these societies and cultures have been on and off this planet from the very beginning. It is not just that we, the Pleiadians, have come to assist. We are only one grouping from one star system. There are many who have journeyed here for many reasons. The majority of the extraterrestrials are here for your upliftment, though there are also those who are here for other reasons. We give our version of things only to bring you into higher consciousness. We do not wish to say that this version and only this version is how it is. This whole teaching is designed with a great purpose in mind, and the stories that we tell you are set up to take you to a higher plane of consciousness. That is our intention. You are magnificent beings, members of the family of light, and you come to Earth at this time on assignment to create a shift, to make a change, to assist in the transition. You were told before you came here that there would be much assistance and that at different junctures of your development, different entities would present themselves upon the planet in different capacities to trigger you, fire you up, and remind you, not to do it for you. We are one of those triggers, a catalyst. When you hear the name Pleiadians, you feel a connection because we are assisting you in bringing your own information, your own knowing forward. You yourself chose to be here. You are on assignment to bring memory forward and to bring the value of human existence back to the forefront of creation. You are needed. You have been in training for this assignment for lifetimes, and you did not come unprepared. All that you need to know now is inside of you, and it is your task to remember your training. This is not a lifetime when you are going to be taught new information. As we said before, this is the lifetime when you are going to remember what you already know, and we are just here to remind you of it. That is part of our assignment. Humanity is an experiment. Humanity has been designed, as has just about everything else that exists within creation. Prime Creator began experimenting with creation a long time ago in this universe for the purpose of greater self-exploration, self-gratification, and self-expression. Prime Creator brought energies and essences of life, extensions of itself, into this universe and endowed those extensions with the gifts that it had. Prime Creator said to these extensions of itself, "Go out and create and bring all things back to me." Earth was a beautiful place, located on the fringes of one of the galactic systems and easily reached from other galaxies. It was close to many way portals, the highways that exist for energies to travel throughout space. Some of the creator gods were master geneticists. The master geneticists designed various species, some human, some animal, by playing with the varieties of DNA that the sentient civilizations contributed to make Earth into this exchange center of information, this light center, this living library. The original planners of Earth were members of the family of light, beings who worked for and were associated with an aspect of consciousness called light. They designed a place where galaxies would contribute their information and where all would be able to participate and share their specific knowledge. Earth was to be a cosmic library, a place of incredible beauty that experimented with how information could be stored through frequencies and through the genetic process. The project of the living library on Earth was eventually fought over. During Earth's early history, there were wars in space for ownership of this planet. Skirmishes took place, and Earth became a place of duality. Certain creator gods who had the right to do whatever they wanted, because Earth is a free will zone, came in and took over. When the skirmish occurred, a certain group of entities fought in space and won the territory of Earth. These new owners did not want the native Earth species, the humans, to be informed of what took place. Uninformed, the species would be easier to control. That is why light is information and darkness is lack of information. These entities beat out light and Earth became their territory. These new owners who came here 300,000 years ago are the magnificent beings spoken of in your Bible, in the Babylonian and Sumerian tablets, and in texts all over the world. They came to Earth and rearranged the native human species. They rearranged your DNA in order to have you broadcast within a certain limited frequency band whose frequency could feed them and keep them in power. They worked in their laboratories and created versions of humans with a different DNA, the two-stranded double helix DNA. The original DNA pattern was left within the human cells, yet it was not functional. It was split apart, unplugged. We, as Pleiadians, came back through time into what would perhaps be called our past. We came back in order to share a frequency with you, a frequency that each one of you has agreed to carry on this planet in order to change the DNA of the rearranged human race. Earth is assisting, in its own way, the evolution of the universe. It is where the plan begins to blossom, and what happens on Earth is going to affect many, many worlds. The creator gods who have been ruling this planet have the ability to become physical, though mostly they exist in other dimensions. They keep Earth in a certain vibrational frequency while they create emotional trauma to nourish themselves. There are some beings who honor life before everything else, and there are also beings who do not honor life and do not understand their connection to it. Who are these beings who came in and rent asunder the original plans for Earth? Who are these space beings we sometimes refer to as the dark T-shirts? These space beings are part human and part reptilian. We call them the Lizzies because we like to make things a little less emotional and a little humorous so that you don't take them so seriously and get so upset. We are not here to frighten you. We are here to inform you. They have fed off your emotions. One of the big secrets that has been kept from you as a species is the richness and wealth that accompanies emotion. You have been steered away from exploring emotion because through emotion you can figure things out. Your emotions connect you with the spiritual body. The spiritual body, of course, is non-physical, existing on the multidimensional sphere. Why are we telling you all this? Why do you need to know it? You need to know it because the Lizzie reality is re-entering and merging with your dimension. As you awaken to your history, you will begin to open your ancient eyes. These are the eyes of Horus, which see not through the eyes of a human being, but from the point of view of a god. They see the connectedness and purpose of all things, for the ancient eyes are able to see into many realities and to connect the whole picture, the whole history. All of this is to be felt. Allow your brain cells to click into being without your rational conscious mind wanting to define things down to the most minute detail. This experience involves raising a feeling inside yourself, and then one day, at one moment, in one afternoon, having an overwhelming sense of knowing. Having a composition of 1,000 pages long come alive in 5 seconds of divine ecstasy. Before you came into the body, all of you committed to designing events that would fire your codings or blueprints, that would activate your memories. Then you came into the body and you forgot. All of you have had your blueprints and codings fired to some extent because you understand that there is a divine purpose or divine plan that you are a part of. You hold the history of the universe within your physical body. What is occurring upon the planet now is the literal mutation of your physical body, for you are allowing it to be evolved to a point where it will be a computer that can house this information. The firing of the codings and the realization of your identity are going to become phenomenally intense. The reason for this is the evolving DNA. When you have 12 helixes of DNA in place, those helixes will begin to plug into the 12 chakra system. The 12 chakras are vortex centers loaded with information that you must be able to translate. You have to become super beings in whatever reality you enter because, as members of the family of light, the branch of renegades, this is your forte. As members of the family of light, you know the inside scoop. You come as ambassadors to make realities merge and become more informed within themselves so that everyone involved can release fear and become uninhibited. As you grow and come to these higher realms of recognition, you will break through what feels like cement blocks, layers of yourself that have held you down. Think of the frequency that has limited the human experiment as a radio station. The human experiment has had one radio station on for 300,000 years. Same old tunes. The human experiment was unable to turn the dial and hear a different band, so the same frequency was broadcast. This created a quarantine, a sealing off of this planet. The creative cosmic rays sent by Prime Creator and the original planners pierce through this frequency shield. They bombard Earth. However, they must have someone to receive them. Without a receptacle, these creative cosmic rays would create chaos and confusion. You, as members of the family of light, come into this system to receive these rays of knowledge. You then disseminate the knowledge, the new lifestyle, and the new frequency to the rest of the population to alter the entire planet. The ultimate tyranny in a society is not control by martial law. It is control by the psychological manipulation of consciousness through which reality is defined so that those who exist within it do not even realize that they are in prison. They do not even realize that there is something outside of where they exist. We represent what is outside of what you have been taught exists. It is where you sometimes venture and where we want you to dwell. It is outside of where society has told you you can live. What we want more than anything else is to assist you, as members of the family of light, to succeed in liberating the humans. Focus on the dance of yourself. To what tune will you dance, and to what magic will you perform And to what heights will you be willing to push consciousness to give it a new definition of possibilities? Members of the Bringers of the Dawn, or Family of Light, work in teams. You don't go into systems alone. You need each other to do this work because you cannot hold the frequency by yourself. By going in as teams, you increase the odds of successfully carrying out the plan. You are like rays and light spirals of the central sun that are very intelligent, and you are guided by a great intelligence inside the central sun. The members of the Family of Light are much more than human. Characteristically, you are supreme achievers in the multidimensional realm. One applies for a position in the multidimensional realm as a member of the Family of Light. If you were to have a business card printed up for yourselves when you are in full memory of your identity, it would say something like, Renegade Member of Family of Light, Systems Buster, available for altering systems of consciousness within the free will universe, on call. We speak to you as if you are not human, because to us, you are not. To us, you are members of the Family of Light, and we know your multidimensional selves. We speak to you about dealing with humans because it is your assignment to integrate with them, soothe them, and awaken a spark of light within them so that they are not all destroyed, and so that this place can house a new species and a new realm of activity. Our final words include a thank you to all of you who recognize the light source that is a part of your identity and that moves you to follow the silent whispers that echo down the golden spirals through the corridors of your own being. We honor you, we recognize you, and we are here to assist you. We are all here as the Family of Light to bring that choice and that freedom to evolve back onto this planet. Family of Light, wake up.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
We have the power. We just need to take it back from this level of division, apartness, can'tness, to isness, I amness. I am all that is, ever has been, and ever will be-ness.
Some people might not know exactly who the Pleiadians were.
They're here to rescue the human beings who are being enslaved on this planet and forced into a paradigm of a super oligarchy.
This is the level of the transformation. This is the level of the revolution, if you want to call it that. It's not guns, it's consciousness.
What a mind job. So you're here to save the world. What do you say to something like that?
In order to walk among us, they disguised their appearance by cloning human flesh over their own reptilian skin. I thought everyone here was up to speed. But the visitors didn't just get here. They've been here for years.
This completion has been heralded by many for eons. What happens on Earth now will affect the entire universe.
We are their whole life. They come from Orion, Mars they own, they have huge detention centers and huge meat lockers. Most of the people who die are taken to Mars and they have hanging pens where they then kill them again astrally in these hanging pens. I think they probably are raping people while they're getting ready to be hanged, because that is tremendous fear, and they ingest that energy. They will torture little children in front of their parents so that they can get that energy. I mean, there's no depths that this race will not stoop to.
When the atomic bomb was dropped, that really got their attention. And you remember at the end of the 1940s and the beginning of the 1950s is when they began the rash of the first UFO sightings. That's when it all began, because they had to come and see what was going on. Before that, you only heard of a few things, just isolated stories and things before that. It all began with the atomic bomb, because they had to find out what we were up to, and was very important, not just for Earth, but for the galaxies and everything. So when they found out what we were doing, they became very concerned, because they said, these kids can't even handle their own affairs. Look at the war they just came through. Look at the things they're doing to each other, the violence. They can't even handle that. They'll never be able to handle an atomic power. So they were very concerned, what are we going to do to ourselves? So they went back to the council. I said, couldn't you just come in and say, stop it with the atomic power? They said, that's interference, and they are bound by that. So they came up with what I think is a brilliant plan that I don't think anyone else would have ever come up with but the ones who created us. They said, all right, we cannot interfere from the outside. What if we do it a different way from the inside? Because I've had people while they're under talking about when they came and what they left they were so happy with. They were happy on the other planets. They were happy when they were with God. And I said, then why did you come to Earth? They said, I heard the call. And this has happened time after time after time with my clients. They say, I heard the call. I knew I had to come. Earth was in trouble. I volunteered. Now, why would this be repeated through hundreds of people if there wasn't something to it? They look just like you. Okay. They have no conscious memory of where they came from. So they're not here to corrupt anything. They're not here to cause any problems. We don't want to go on a witch hunt looking for these people, because now there are tens of thousands of them all over the world. They said, finally, we have tipped the scale. We think we can save the Earth by the sheer number of these souls that have no karma. They really didn't have to be here at all. They just came. But that's where the three waves come in. And when I first wrote about this in Keepers of the Garden, that was 20 years ago. Now I get letters, because the books are translated all over the world, and they all said, I didn't know that was what it was. I didn't know why I felt the way I do, and now I understand, and I can live with it.
Hi, my name is Dan Winter. I'm a psychophysiologist. I work in biofeedback,
and have discovered some very interesting things about the electrical nature of emotion. And in the process of doing that, we've been doing frequency signatures or harmonics of the heart at the moments when people feel bliss and joy and compassion. And we've discovered that at moments when people have intense emotions, their heart creates frequency pictures which are a powerful indicator that they're doing something electrical inside their body when they have emotions. And recently, with my friend Will here, we've been having these conversations about this Technocalypse television documentary that's kind of sweeping Europe. And we're a little troubled about a certain part of that. It has to do with the way in which they seem to be urging you to consider using little microchips and other ways to include machinery as part of biology. And they're kind of saying, well, there's nothing sacred about the shape of the body and the electricity of the heart, and machines can be doing this better. And so then we're actually stuck in the middle of something of a quandary, because my work on emotion has suggested to me that we could actually answer a profound question about what is the purpose of DNA in an entirely new way, which gives us a completely different view of what we should be doing with the relationship of technology to biological substances. So our little fun answer to this question of what is the purpose of DNA is very brief. It's called Bliss and the Magnetic X, and that's really the subject of our little story today. And it has to do with this idea that we believe we've discovered some secrets, some visions to exactly how human passionate, bliss-related emotion actually gets into the genetic material. And therefore, emotion's ability to program and shape, and we're going to talk about braid the DNA, has everything to do with the genetic material having been in this profound shape which nature put it in. And if we go messing in there with this genetic engineering and all these chips in your cells, we stand to actually affect dramatically whether or not emotion can continue to program DNA. So in order to tell you this story, I'm going to show you some pictures of what we're calling the Magnetic X generation. And it's kind of play on words from this old story of there's this, we had this post-World War II generation, the baby boom, and then there was the X generation. And the notion here is that if you feel enough bliss, it has an effect on your DNA, and we'll see that's been measured. So your DNA becomes a magnetic X. It's kind of a fun notion. So here are the pictures. Which is, you do this over, and then under, and then over, and then under, and then each time your hands got closer together because the braid was getting shorter, right? Well, if you took the hair out of your hand and instead put a pen in your hand, you would have drawn the frequency signature of the harmonics of the EKG of the heart at the moment of love. And so you can begin to understand kind of mechanically what Glenn Ryan measured in that study, which is how the sounds of your heart mechanically braid your DNA. And so let's take a break and we'll look at some more pictures. So I was fortunate to work with this molecular biologist, PhD, Dr. Adoniah McKinsey from Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. And she wrote an article saying that with the discovery of recombinant DNA biotechnology, essentially genetic engineering, humanity made off with Mother Nature's scissors. Unfortunately, we know less than she. The part of the article I'd like to discuss here is where she says, quote, "It is assumed that the preponderance of junk DNA that intervenes between coding regions is inefficient, useless, and could be removed for greater streamlining. In actuality, these spans serve multiple biological functions, cancer prevention, gene inductions, and should be left in place within the genome. She then discusses what she calls jumping genes, and that if the genetic engineers attenuate non-coding regions, that is, cut them out, they may increase the likelihood of jumping gene-induced cancer. Well, the article is getting a little bit technical, but very simply, we're beginning to get the sense that we must understand how it is that the mechanical spacing between the gaps in the slinky of your DNA is actually the issue of proper genetic function. And then further in the article, Dr. Adoniah McKenzie goes on to say, and I'll just read this briefly, intervening sequences, introns, can be necessary for effective gene induction. For DNA to be converted to RNA from a coding sequence, an upstream promoter must be induced. And what she further says then basically is that this upstream promoter, this intron, has to find that the space it climbs in the ladder, the mechanical interval, has to be kind of musically right. So the spacing between the rungs of the ladder, even mechanically as it's braided, have so much to do with how groups of genetic material actually are able to do this jumping gene and the work of the introns where they move themselves between groups of codons. So the mechanical position of the groups becomes the issue, which is just what we were saying about braiding. And then at the end of the article, Dr. McKenzie says, and you can read the article again at danwinter.com/magneticx, which is the article that originally helped us work on this piece. In the end of her article, she says, oh yes, and by the way, there are magnetic field effects in the genetic material that can't happen if this long wave structural alignment doesn't happen. So she begins to start giving us this clue again that, golly, we need this magnetic field effect in order for DNA to work properly, and the magnetic field effect can't happen without the long wave braiding, and the long wave braiding just simply can't be this embeddable nesting if the genetic engineers keep slicing out little segments of the slinky, not realizing what the long wave is about in DNA. So that brings us to some of the other pictures, which really have to do with, let's see if we can find the pictures here. The one I wanted to show you here, here's the slinky, okay. This is the one where we're showing that the ratio of the diameter of the DNA helix to one full 10-turn ratchet, 20 to 34 angstroms, very closely approaches the golden mean ratio. And further, that, remember when we were talking about the top-down view? Here's another picture of the top-down view. I wanted to play this picture. You see that if you saw the magnetic donuts as a kind of cloud or smoke ring donuts formation, you have this 10-sided view, and then you have this picture from the biophysics literature. If we zoom in right here, we see that each rung of the ladder of DNA is actually based on this accurate 36-degree angle, 1/10 of a circle. 36 degrees is 1/10 of 360. So you have this braiding based on the decagram. Remember we showed this top-down view decagram, this helix? So now we can understand back over here that in this top-down view, maybe if you zoomed in really close here, just right on this part right here, you see that the waves are able to add and multiply as they compress themselves into that nest. And this creates the perfect compression, which is literally happening right in the center of the slinky of your DNA. And this is the issue of the perfect squirt gun, which was back here. Let's see if we can find it. Right here. Here's the squirt gun action. Let's move this. I'm going to move this to center just a little bit. Okay. And you see that now we've got this X right here. Okay. You understand now that you had a braid of the braid of the braid on the braid. And eventually you get this X right here, where many short waves and many long waves cross each other right at the center. And that creates the phenomena of this harmonic cascade right here, which is literally the mouth of the X. That's the magnetic X. And the point is, what we believe is the wave fronts at that point begin adding and multiplying And I'm moving this again, sorry about that. I just want you to see the rest of this picture. See how the wave fronts begin adding and multiplying because of the perfect nesting of the wave on the wave. And that's what we believe is literally the implosion, which sends the wavelength through the speed of light at the center of DNA. And there's an animation I'd like to play for you in just a second about that. So here we're actually taking another look at the ratio of the donuts, except all I've done is I've revolved the sine wave in 3D so it looks like a flame or fire. And the ratio between the size of the harmonics is based on the golden ratio, so you get this concrescence, we called it. And you can see how this phi's ray, or golden ratio, could be almost thought of like fire. And we call this how the grid is ignited, but it's really just how the heart is ignited, how the fire is lit. And this is a little animation we prepared so you see how these heart harmonics become ordered right here. The harmonics become very nested, and that creates a cascade where the frequency signature of the harmonics at the moment of bliss shows that the second order frequency harmonic analysis looks like it's the wave you started with. The wave is in the wave embedded, and the interval between harmonics is golden ratio, as close to 0.618 as we can measure. And that creates this pattern of what's called perfect bifurcation or perfect branching. Okay, this is branching. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. And the space between the branches is actually based on golden ratio, as is the nesting of the Mandelbrot set of perfect fractality, which is simply perfect embedding or perfect nesting, which we'll see in a minute is the business of perfect turning inside out nest or perfect compression. So bifurcation, or how to divide without dividing, the solution to the problem of separateness is solved by this phyllotaxis of perfect branching. And that creates that perfect spin path into the center, which is that three-dimensional golden mean spiral. And I just want to back this up just a little bit. So you see here that if we take those same 10 spirals of the golden mean, and we had seen them from the top view, it would look exactly like the top-down view of DNA we just saw. Yet, if now we see that revolved from the side view, what those spirals embed, here we've gone 32 degrees, which is from the hex to the pent. We've gone from a five-sided to a six-sided view. And if we revolve further now, we see the side view of these two, what look like pine cones right here. And this is a pineal shape. It looks like a pine cone, and it might even be related to perfect, what we call pining or yearning. It looks like a screwing action. And it has embedded this nest of this shape we call the dodecahedron, which is simply a shape which is based entirely on the golden ratio. So it's the beginning of the map to sacred geometry. And we see that as a particular shape which could embed itself one inside each other, just like these perfect little dolls where you see one inside the other. In fact, let's take a look at that in just one second. Remember when you were a kid and your mother would give you these little dolls where you had the father doll and the mother doll and the little baby doll, and they all fit inside each other? Well, they had to be a certain kind of shape so that they all could nest one inside each other. And this possibility of embedding requires this perfect shape. And it appears that at this moment of compassion, when we feel heart harmonics that are so ordered like this, it's because we literally create a shape inside ourselves which is so much like the shape outside ourselves that it starts this little implosion, this suction, this fractal attractor, which is literally the turning inside out of the heart's magnetism made possible because the inside looks like the outside. This is called becoming self-similar, which turns out to be the principle of fractality or perfect embedding. So now we can look back at our animation and see how the squirt gun completes itself. How that progression through the speed of light happens is because this wavelength and this wavelength and this wavelength are all in golden mean ratio. So they stand on each other's shoulders and they add and multiply recursively. And what they add and multiply recursively is not just their wave velocity, not just their wavelength, but their wave velocity. So what happens is that the wave that comes out the end of this what's called heterodyning, or perfect wave interference, is that in radio theory, when the wave fronts stand on each other's shoulders, they create a squirt gun effect where the wave front can be pushed not just its wavelength, but its wave velocity. And when that happens in perfect embedding, the wave goes through the speed of light out right here. And that's how you get that squirt gun through the speed of light, which may relate to our ideas about spirit and ensoulment. Now we're going to begin to understand how you have this shape of this magnetic X in your heart harmonics, which is reflected then in the cascade of harmonics where the fold of a braid on a longer wave braid all meets at one point in a perfect magnetic X in your DNA. And if the short waves ratio to the longer wave yet, in that envelope inside an envelope inside a longer wave envelope, if that discipline of braiding, the hygiene in your DNA, is braid dense or spin dense or charge dense or bliss dense, then the squirt gun works. And what happens is the adding and multiplying can happen inside your genetic material, and you feel this implosion happen, which is the tingle you feel when you love somebody, when you tripped over a shareable thought. You felt something so profound that your hair stood up. It's this magnetic rush you feel, which is a magnetic X. And what happens is that, I believe, literally, mechanically, sends that little zipper, that little lightning rod up the center of your DNA through the speed of light, and in a sense, into time. And I believe that we could understand that lightning rod going through the speed of light as actually the beginning of the spiritual notion of soul. So once more, to review, when these harmonics add and multiply not just their wavelength, but their wave velocity in perfect wave interference, what comes off the tip of this perfect little vortex squirt gun is that this wave, which is the side view of a golden spiral on a cone, has been pushed through the speed of light. And that's the beginning of the superluminal, or faster than light component, up the zipper in your DNA. So visualize your genetic material getting this inertia that can push it through the speed of light, literally into time. And that little tornado within a tornado, when it gets going that fast, is the coherence that may be related to the spiritual notion of soul. That ensoulment may be the result of this perfect braiding in your DNA. So the issue of this whole conversation is about the fact that if you lose this perfect symmetry in the braid, the mechanical structural distance between the envelope sizes, short wave within longer wave yet, you may lose the ability to have this faster than light phenomena happen in your genetic material. What we're trying to say here in a fairly scientific way is the fact that genetic engineered food may cost your children their soul. And that is, it seems strange to put such a spiritual notion in scientific terms, but in fact I believe that's what we're very close to, is we could describe the nature of what's sacred by describing the nature of what makes a wave sustainable. And waves become sustainable when they become compressible because there's no destructive interference. Perfect compression, perfect compassion, perfect fire, perfect awareness, perfect self-reference. So quantify or measure ability to self-refer. The golden mean spiral is the only angle at which a wave can re-enter itself, refer to itself, non-destructively. So self-reference, self-embedding may be the solution to self-awareness. So what we're suggesting is, in fact, the front end of that worm up the slinky of your DNA may in fact get an eyeball, be able to begin to steer itself. Remember the Buddha at the moment of the bliss and the rapture? You saw this snake or the serpent come out from the magnetic field of the pine-shaped pineal gland, and that the magnetic worm is able to steer itself around and make choices. The ability of a field effect to become self-aware, to have a conductor, the ability of a snake to be able to choose where to steer, may depend on the fact of this perfect embedding of this magnetic X. So we're suggesting that magnetic fields become self-organizing when they emerge from chaos by becoming perfectly fractal. Golden mean ratio as the solution of perfect branching embedding may be the solution of fractality. So to become self-similar or fractal electrically may be the solution to how field effects become self-aware, because they simply become able to respond to so many harmonics at once, because you can't get an infinite number of harmonics to nest at one point unless they're in phi, the golden ratio, knit by phi, or in phi knit. You have this sense at which the field effects concress or converge all to one point, and they share one place where they can all throw their weight around at this like center of gravity. And because there's this inner fire, this implosion around the heart, you get the ability to throw your weight around electrically. You create this charge implosion, which may be exactly how capacitors, when they become self-embedded, make gravity. Gravity occurs when waves become self-similar. It's the solution of perfect compression, which Einstein sought when he said, how does infinite compression allow black holes to bend time? Now we know what perfect compression is. We know what makes gravity, charge becoming fractally implosive. We know how the heart makes a little bit of gravity because it makes centering force at the moment of bliss associated with this implosion going through the speed of light. And that implosion creates the possibility of a field effect that can become self-organizing, self-steering, self-aware. We did a presentation for the Deepak Chopra lab based on this, that we could, by doing harmonic analysis, looking for the opening spaces in the heart becoming multiples of phi, and we could quantify self-awareness by measuring self-reference.
There is a growing citizens movement demanding an explanation of chemtrails.
And I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
It's not the same as conducting some localized test for some defensive project. This is open air operations. It's not a test. This thing is in place.
It didn't start until about 1996. Exactly. And, growing up my whole life, a condensation trail disappeared, the 20 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And now it can be in the summer at like 4,000 feet, and there's these big clouds behind jets. Some jets leave it behind, leave a trail behind them. Other jets at the same flight level, same altitude, don't. And you know, instead of just getting into are they spraying us or what's changed in the jet fuel or what's changed in the atmosphere, there are tens of thousands of declassified admissions under different programs where different Pentagon programs, different agencies of the government have tested chemical, biological, and radiological agents on the American people.
Talking about this a few years ago was extremely dangerous. Now that we have YouTube and more social networking devices, such as even Rupert's MySpace, this is really getting out in such a way that they can't control it. They must just be really, if you can use the expression, shitting themselves over this, because they can't control people now talking about the elephant in the room, what is so obvious to all of us.
There's a feeling from that area that the state doing all of these weather modification programs might not be doing it for the benefit of the citizens of Texas and other states that they may impact as well.
Well, many of the planes that we're seeing here in Abilene will actually turn whatever they're spraying on and off right before our eyes. I mean, you'll see a plane up there flying like normal, and then all of a sudden it starts spraying. We've seen them fly off into the distance and then loop around and fly back again. These are not your typical planes with a preordained path destination from city to city. Someone needs to explain to me why do they stop traveling in one particular direction and then loop around and come back again. They perform this behavior so many times that we start seeing the tic-tac-toe grids in the sky. We're witnessing the giant X's. And I mean, Rosalind, when you and I grew up, these contrails naturally dissipated in a few seconds or perhaps a minute max. But these things expand, they grow bigger, and before you know it, the entire sky is overcast.
That's correct. And they are there all day. They do loop the loop around our county and our state. We follow them at times with spotters in different areas, watching the planes loop, come back around. And we know from the FAA records that the jets from commercial airlines fly in straight lines. And coming across our county, there aren't many, and they stay mostly in certain patterns. The jets that we see leaving the persistent jet contrails move in directions that normal jets wouldn't fly because it would use too much fuel and put them off schedule. And the jets that we see here do loops. We've got pictures of them looping the same X's and crosshatches. But I believe that some of that, not only are they looking for keeping something in the air almost all the time, but we feel that some of the markings are to mark the start and stop areas for their programs so that they can watch their experiments either from satellite or the ground.
Why do they want to keep this quiet? Why aren't they talking about this? Why don't they want us talking about it? And you can only come to the conclusion that they're hiding something.
Now, do you believe that this is a full-scale secret operation that includes not only the U.S. but Europe and the rest of the world?
Well, that's apparent because you can see the pictures from all over the world, and I get them constantly. Some areas are worse than others. The excuse for this is, number one, weather modification. Number two, to save us from global warming, and number three, to save us from the terrorists. A lot of these programs, of which there are many patterns and which has been designated as wake vortex simulation carried out by NASA Langley Research Center, many of these operations and the patents go on to explain how if there is a biological attack by terrorists at some point, that these exercises and practices will, in a sense, save us with the spider webbery that comes down from the aerosol spraying, potentially gathering the chemical mass spray that could be sprayed on any given population. The problem with that is the terrorists don't have the means to deliver this. They don't have the access to deliver this over the American populace per se. And the only people who have been doing this, that is biological experiments on the American people, is the military themselves, which has been admitted from everything from Operation Shad to the spraying that happened in San Francisco, I believe back in the 60s and the 70s, that literally killed people.
Again, I may not be able to ascribe intent, but what I can say is that it is expected that there will be increased mortality as well as the potential of a huge host of unknown pathogens that we are subject to, and this is not based on speculation. There's a whole arena of biological research that we haven't even begun to touch on.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government
found in our sample?
At a community in the San Bernardino Mountains has a real mystery on its hands. The official explanation here is that jet contrails are causing strange lines in the sky.
What effects barium has on the body. Short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
You're talking about dominating our air supply without the human consent in a way that is difficult for many of us certainly to conceive, and certainly many of us refuse to accept it even in the light of sufficient and overwhelming evidence.
What does HARP do? HARP is a large antenna where we beam radio frequency energy up into the upper atmosphere. HARP can create some of the effects that the sun creates that are similar to the aurora borealis.
In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
For the lack of openness that now shrouds this democracy under the guise of national security. A glimpse into the military window has been achieved, and a central theme will eventually emerge, and that is of control. Control in the deepest and far-reaching sense that you may imagine. For when the atmosphere of the planet is controlled, life itself, in the end, is controlled. With a basic knowledge of plasma physics, that is, the physics of an energized gas or atmosphere, it is impossible to proceed further without at least a brief introduction to the HARP facility and technology. HARP, or High Active Auroral Research Program, is operated by the U.S. Air Force and is claimed to be simply a research facility. The stated purpose by the Air Force for the HARP project is that of a scientific endeavor aimed at studying the properties and behavior of the ionosphere, with particular emphasis on being able to understand and use it to enhance communications and surveillance systems for both civilian and defense purposes. It may be this, and then again, it may be more than simply a scientific endeavor. It may also be enlightening to consider United States Patent 4686605 by Bernard Eastlund in 1987 entitled, A Method and Apparatus for Altering a Region in the Earth's Atmosphere, Ionosphere, and/or Magnetosphere. There are many who have sensibly concluded that this patent essentially represents a blueprint for the HARP facility as it has been constructed. This patent makes mention of numerous objectives and methods of operation that far exceed any scientific endeavor alone, and references the work of Nikola Tesla as a source of historical contribution. The amazing inventions and achievements of Tesla with respect to energy transfer and amplification, including the use of the atmosphere as a medium for sending energy from point A to point B, are well documented. The documents of Tesla were eventually confiscated at the close of his life, especially as they related to military matters, and he is generally now accepted as an unrecognized genius. The current incarnation of ionospheric heating is able to, according to Mr. Eastlund, put unprecedented amounts of power in the Earth's atmosphere at strategic locations, and to maintain that power level with the pulsing of energy. This patent also recommends the use of large clouds of barium so that ionization by sunlight will increase the electron density within the plasma environment. Testing and analysis does now positively indicate the presence of unusual levels of barium, a toxic element, within atmospheric samples. The amount of power inherent in the design of the HARP project is further indicated by Mr. Eastlund stating that the present invention can be formed to simulate or perform the same functions as a detonation of a heave-type nuclear device without actually having to detonate such a device. A heave weapon has the effect of lifting the magnetic field of the Earth itself and involves the expenditure of massive amounts of energy. The patent is further stated to have numerous military implications, including the enhancement of or interference with communication and guidance systems, including those of airplanes and missiles, radar interference, missile destruction, weather modification, material transport of micron-sized particles, and molecular change of the atmosphere are each mentioned as further applications of the patent design. The executive summary for the HARP project also specifically mentions forcing the descent of particles from the atmosphere toward the ground using ELF radiation from HARP.
Hey folks, just wanted to throw this video response up. Once again, the boys over at the Suspicious Observers are keeping their finger on the pulse. HARP's going to be an important aspect in the months to come. Don't discount it. Take a look at it. Here we go.
What is a thought? Neuroscientists would say it's just a pattern of electrical activity inside our brains. I scowl or smile, my thoughts can cross a room. In fact, they're reaching out to touch you right now.
How is this possible? Our brains put out electromagnetic waves, similar to any type of propagator, only much less powerful. Now, you can argue that some of these propagators are not as dangerous as some of the extreme theorists propose. However, the effect of certain resonances on matter cannot be denied. There's no hydraulics at work here, only radio frequencies. The truly significant effects of this type of technology is another topic for a longer video, but if you were to say, "I am HAARP," you would not be totally wrong. Now, true enough, you do not have a large antenna array in your skull, at least I hope not, and your brain waves are nothing compared to the high-frequency signals that HAARP propagates, nothing compared to the radio frequencies by a ham radio even. But the fundamental wave structure and the potential to affect the universe, even if only slightly, is exactly the same. Makes you wonder what would happen if we all tried to use it together. I am especially interested in the study of consciousness at Princeton University. Now, you may have heard about the Global Consciousness Project, and if I may amateurishly summarize its significance here, random number generators from all over the planet are linked to this site, and it has been proven that human brain waves can degrade the anomalous nature, the randomness of that number generation. Now, a precise calibration allows these scientists to determine the effect of significant events on the human consciousness of the entire world. Now, this is the real-time electrodiagram, similar to raw data of an electroencephalogram of brainwaves, only this shows a coalescence of global consciousness. Now, you can see there are different readings of significance here, including some ones all the way up to the present down at the bottom, but of particular interest is 9/11. Now, the black squares here are the plane impacts and tower collapses, and yes, you may have heard this before, it's true. The global consciousness began rising like they have never seen before, more than 5 hours before the first plane hit. This is something that they're finding more and more of as time goes on. Now, spider sense, psychics, intuition. Now, this is not entirely unheard of, although much muddled nowadays. Now, the use of the electromagnetic field of Earth is quite common in animals and nature, and you can't help but wonder if this is only the beginning of our understanding of it. Now, I must caution you in your search for truth in this genre. The path before you is rife with some self-serving, self-promoting individuals who may have valuable information, yet still only represent one viewpoint of your consciousness. Before I give my opinion, I want you to remember that your primary duty of discernment here involves separating the facts from the opinions, and then making your own. I believe each of us has the ability to affect things in the universe. Just like the electromagnetic fields and currents span galaxies and beyond, so do the waves propagated by the capacitors housed within each of us. Your thoughts right now are sending waves to the end of the universe. And in recognition of that fact, perhaps it would serve us to be cognizant of our own minds. All you have to see is this. You should realize that your thoughts affect you, how you feel. They affect others, and might even be able to give us warnings about the future. For $3 on iTunes, you can learn a little bit more about that. Now, this was meant to be an introduction into topics you might want to look into further. I certainly plan to do so myself. As always, the links are below. Be safe, everyone.
Remember, folks, research is like a jungle wrought with hazards. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Be safe, folks.
They know if the wallet is here, down there, or up here. At this point, is anything missing? Double check. No, okay, then you can put that back in your pocket, sir, and be careful on the way down. All right, thank you very much, sir. Enjoy, all right, now. On the side, come back, okay, now.
Good morning, my name is Carol Rosin. In 1974, after being a 6th grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun, in the U.S. the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, "Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space." And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern.
And our resolve is clear. The people of Libya must be protected.
Others say it's about oil.
The only reason they're interested with Libya is about the oil. You'd think we'd be in Iraq if the major export there was broccoli.
But some are convinced intervention in Libya is all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold.
As soon as you say you're going to change over from the dollar to something else, you're going to be targeted.
Then there would be asteroids.
You know, we in NASA, we're an incredibly unique organization. We're the only agency in the federal government that's responsible for the safety and well-being of people, not only here on Earth, but off this planet.
So you've got an object connected to alanine through a series of 19.5 linkages. Like alanine was artificial, it's looking to our analysis now that YU55 is artificial, and that leaves wide open the possibility that it can do a lot of things besides just peacefully fly by. And the model said that one possible reason to change the trajectory would be to slightly alter the course, the orbit of YU55, so instead of flying through the Earth-Moon system and leaving, in fact, it might impact either the Earth and or the Moon.
And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
Are there any Anunnaki either here physically on Earth or communicating telepathically with anyone here?
Not in their original form contemporarily, unless you are referring to the Greys as the devolved result of a certain branch of Anunnaki.
Just heaven help us, it's so hardcore, people won't even believe it. But that's the kind of stuff I never even get into because you're not ready for it. The globalists don't believe in Satanism. They believe they're contacting interdimensional aliens through the drug use and through the electronic interface, and they believe, and they actually write about, Ray Kurzweil, all of them, that they're going to merge with the machines, blast off into hyperdimensional space. And that's why they're so crazy. That's why they want to get rid of us. That's why they're smiling and giddy and acting so nuts, because they believe, if you're a psychiatrist and are hearing this, understand, whether it's real or not, they believe they are in contact with these entities and are being directed by them. That's why they're so evil. And the entities are telling them eternal life, total power, total control, everything you could ever want. Just kill everyone. Set up a world government. Build this design we're telling you. Build what we're telling you. Build this. Build this. Let us through. Build the Hadron Collider. Open the dimensions. Let us in. We're going to really help you. We're friendly little guys. Demons? Aliens? Don't exist? I don't know. I only cover what I can prove. But now, I'm telling you, one of the big secrets of the elite, okay? And that gets pretty David Icke-ing. I don't know if any of that stuff's real, ladies and gentlemen. But the point is, that's what the elite are into. That's what they believe. That's what's going on.
Okay. Did you understand that already?
Yeah, somewhat. Maybe another faction then.
A faction of the Anunnaki set up shop, if you will, on a planet, and ultimately created catastrophes in their world that ultimately resulted in the devolution of themselves into the form you now understand as the Grey.
Why in the world is the Vatican seemingly in the business of trying to find ET?
Yeah, it sounds like a stretch, doesn't it, TJ?
Yeah.
Well,
The Vatican got interested in astronomy because they had to keep the calendar, and you need astronomers to do that. And actually, for the last 100 years, there have been Jesuit priests doing research astronomy. So they have a tradition of being interested in astronomy.
Did the Vatican find alien life?
You know what? As sensationalistic as that question sounds, it's really not that far off from what we've seen in the news over these last days. The pictures of what might have been Pope Benedict standing on the roof of the Sistine Chapel looking for UFOs, that's the type of images that this news conjures up.
An incredible story coming out of the Vatican. Listen to this. The senior Vatican scientist said that he would be delighted if we encountered intelligent aliens and would be happy to baptize them.
The Nazis came to power in January of 1933. On July the 20th of 1933, the Vatican would sign a concordat with the Nazis. Why would the Catholic Church do this? Because the goals of Hitler and the Nazi regime matched the Vatican's own desire for world political power.
Now, the United Nations is getting ready for a contact with aliens from outer space. This is Moslin Othman. She's out of Malaysia. She will be planet Earth's first interstellar diplomat.
In light of the economic crisis, the Vatican released a proposal to tackle the world's financial market. The document, titled Reforming the International Financial System, was presented at the Vatican press office. The document says the market needs a so-called global public authority that can make sure all players are following the rules of the game.
Pope Benedict XVI is calling for a new world financial order. In the third encyclical of his pontificate, Benedict denounced the profit at all cost mentality of the globalized economy, and he lamented that greed brought about the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear on the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies.